Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. As you can see, we've got all the parts in for our TKX transmission upgrade. We'll get this guy unboxed. We've got the Stifflers transmission mount. Got a new bell housing. Got the clutch here. Let's see, this is a Ram clutch. Premium clutch set. New aluminum drive shaft. And all the parts and pieces. I'll put links to everything in the description down below. Let's get this TKX out of the box. There it is. I'm not going to bore you with all the ins and outs of the actual installation because I'm sure all of you have seen it before. But if I run across any issues or any tips or tricks to share, I'll stop and share those with you. Let's get to it. Exercise equipment. Oh, there it is. Just create some toilet seat cover. Hey! What are you doing in here? I'm playing with this fancy here new exercise bit that you got here and this here fancy toilet seat cover. Get out of here, you idiot. So I ran into a couple of issues putting the TKX transmission in. The factory bolts do not thread into this new bell housing. Okay, this is a 7/16 by 14 bolt, 2 inches long, and that's what you need. So I've replaced the Crossmember here with Stifflers Crossmember, and I used the energy suspension transmission mount. I'm not 100% sure about the height of the transmission, you know, how high it's supposed to be or whatever in relation to the car itself. So I want to kind of let the H-pipe tell me how many spacers I need to use here underneath. One question for you guys, any of you with the Pro-M system, what does this plug into? This came with the TKX kit from Pro-M. Obviously one side of it plugs into the speed sensor up here at the top. That's one side of this wide off cable here. But the other side, I can't find anywhere that it goes. I don't think it plugs into the transmission because we have here, this is the neutral safety switch. That goes into the side of the car here. And then you have here the reverse light on the side of the TKX transmission, and that plugs in and goes through the same hole as the neutral safety switch. So I don't have any idea what that goes to. Another thing I noticed is it's no longer center of the hole there, as you can tell. So it's off to the right, off to the passenger side. I haven't got up there to put all that back together yet, but I'm hoping that it'll all work out. I think it will, but that's just, it's not center of the hole like the old T5 was. What else did we run into? Oh, well, this transmission, when it was delivered, the UPS man or somebody must have dropped it because the shifter was actually broken. Let me show you. There's the shifter from Tremec, however you say it. I noticed that I could not push it over, like going into first and second. It would go over for fifth and reverse, but would not come over for first and second. And upon pulling the little boot off, we found this little piece, little broken piece, and I later found out that's called the Z-bar, and it goes down into this hole here, and obviously holding that piece together and broken. And the transmission was actually forced into gear as well from the fall or the drop or whatever. I called up Summit Racing, and kudos to Summit. A lady answered the phone, got me on a three-way call immediately with Tremec Technician came on the line and he asked what the problem was. I told him, and he said, okay, we'll overnight you a new shifter, and then you have to pull the plate off just ahead of the shifter, and one of those shift forks is going to be forwards, most likely. And I opened it up and looked, and sure enough, one of them was forward. And he said, just take a screwdriver and pop it back into place, and you'll be good to go there. Got the new shifter in yesterday. Got it, I mean, literally came 1 day later, FedEx. Put it in, transmission shifts through all the gears nicely. That was that. Kudos to Summit and to Tremec for quick customer service response. That was awesome. I mean, I haven't had a good customer service response like that in years. I don't know if you saw me welding or not, but I found two 12 millimeter by 1.75 nuts, and I actually welded them together to create a really long nut for the header there. I was missing a few threads on that bolt, probably from over tightening through the years or who knows what. So anyway, that was my solution. I ran my die up there to clean up the stud, made this longer nut. That way we can get on past the couple of missed threads without any issues. Okay, another issue I ran into, if you actually measure the length of the transmission from front of the transmission to the actual mounts here, I mean, it's right at 16 inches for the TKX. Now for the stock T5 transmission, this back mount here comes in at about 14 3/4. So this TKX is a good 1 1/4 further back. Well, in trying to mount the H-pipe, the stock mounting locations for the H-pipe will not work. This was my solution. I actually cut those hangers off, see where they were there, and then just moved them back and just use a muffler clamp. That way, whenever I go on and off, it'll be a whole lot easier. I won't have to fight the H-pipe. So that was my solution here. And you can see it on both sides there. If I do have to adjust the height for the TKX transmission, it won't be that big a deal. Regarding the Stifflers transmission crossmember, I do have a little critique here. There's a lot of room right here where they could have made this pipe come on this way a little further. So to give you a little extra room, because you can see what I've ended up with here. Barely any room at all to fit my pipe in there. Now granted, I probably screwed up when I first installed this pipe by pushing these too far together. So I could get a little more room by spreading these apart, but at this point, the clamp has done made a crease in it, so it's really hard to move. But you can also see here, got a finger width there. Here, about a half a finger width. Can't get my finger in there at all. Upon further inspection, I actually moved this brace forward just a little bit more. So what I ended up with is the thinnest spacer on the front and the two thicker spacers in the rear. Obviously that's the same on both sides, but by doing that, you can see your bolts are almost to the rear of the slots. There's a tiny bit more room, but that did afford me another, I don't know, 1/16 or an 1/8 inch of space here. So that makes me feel better about that. So I could actually go up a little higher with my H-pipe now if I need to. I don't think I'm gonna need to, but as you see, it's the level of the pipes are now below subframe connectors. These pipes are well below the drive shaft, and then the drive shaft is also at its lowest point because the rear end is obviously let down. So there you go, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I should have done anything different. Oh, but the one other thing, I talked about this earlier. The shifter is so far off to the right. I found another video of a guy who actually made a little plate that goes on the side of the shifter handle there to actually move the shifter to the left. So I'm going to tackle that next. Excuse the mess on my workbench. Here's my little block. I cut the radius on it there to match the radius on the shifter. So match up a little better. stronger. I'm gonna have to find some longer bolts here. Those are obviously not long enough. 3/8 by 24. So let's either find or make some bolts. All right, guys, there you go. That's going to space it over closer to the driver, 1 inch. Let me know what you think of this solution. Of course, this is the broken shifter, so I'll transfer this over to the new shifter that is already installed in the car. For those of you that have the Pro-M EFI system like I do, there's a couple little changes you're going to need to make. You go in under your calibration, under sensors, OSS, configuration. Here, and these directions are directly from Chris Richards. Change OSS num teeth to 12. Change the OSS VSS ratio to 1. And say OK. And now under calibration, go down to transmission, gear, ratios. And here we want to input our gear ratios for whichever transmission you chose. The one I chose is the 287 first gear, 1.89 second gear, and third gear 1.28. Fourth gear is 1. Fifth gear is 0.68, which is the same as stock. And then say OK. And now you want to save out these changes. For me, I saved them out as a different file. I saved mine as Tremec TKX install. And now let's go over to the car and load this configuration. Okay, that wasn't a very long first drive, but it appears I've got a major exhaust leak there on the passenger side. The passenger side oxygen sensor was showing really high, and I assume that means that there's an exhaust leak because I can hear it. And I know that pipe's a little wonky on that side where it attaches to the header. We'll get it back up in the air and see if we can figure out what's going on with that. And also I had tightened the clutch cable way too tight as well, so I'll get that loosened up some and try it again. All right, guys, as you know, you can never do anything to these cars without running into something. So that stud right there, I was able to get it out. It took a lot of finessing, but I had a 12 by 1.75 bolt, and I just threaded it up in there for now until I can get me another stud. Okay, another thing I noticed with this bell housing, that bolt hole doesn't line up for the clutch cable cover. That's pushed all the way up, and it's all the way seated in as well. So I think I may, instead of leaving this a hole, I'll just make it a slot. I'll just take it up another bolt width or whatever. And then that way I'll be able to thread it in there. And I'll have some adjustability with it. There it is, got the slot in it. So it fits now. So we're ready to go for a test drive. First impressions of the TKX transmission. First thing I noticed was as soon as I went to put it in reverse, the gears would grind. Okay, now playing with it a little bit with it running, if you let the clutch out, in other words, engage the engine and just let the transmission spin in neutral, you have to go into first to synchronize the transmission, or I guess stop it from spinning, and then go to reverse. If you just go straight to reverse, it grinds every time. I don't know if that's normal or what, but that's what it's doing. Other than that, I didn't notice any mechanical issues with it. Works really well. The shifting is very smooth. The shift from second to third is super smooth and super fast, and it wants to go to third gear from second. I couldn't tell any difference in the ratios versus the stock transmission, except for maybe going down my gravel driveway, I had to go just I don't know, maybe a mile or two an hour faster to keep it from bucking and carrying on. I definitely don't like the clutch pedal feel of this Ram clutch as well as I did the Exceedy one that was in here. Of course, the Exceedy one that was in here could only handle, I think, 450 flywheel horsepower, whereas this one is designed for 550 flywheel horsepower with slicks or drag radials. And the other one was for street tires only. Of course, the clutch is a lot stiffer. It reminds me more of the King Cobra clutch, you know, from back in the day. So I'm sure I'll have lots of clutch cables to change in the future as I shred them, trying to depress this monster of a clutch. First impressions are pretty good, other than grinding going into reverse, unless you hit one of the other gears first to synchronize it. That's the only thing I noticed that was different or weird. I am going to tighten up the clutch cable just a little bit more because it's releasing pretty much right off the floor. Show you how my shifter alignment turned out to be. So if I've got you straight on here, see as straight on as I can get, that's about where it's sitting. Let's see, that's about what I'm seeing when it's in neutral. So it's biased over towards the driver a little bit, and I like it there. I feel like just driving down the road that the shifter is further forwards, maybe, than the stock T5 was, but maybe not, but it just kind of feels that way. But I think the 1-inch block is about right. It could be maybe a little bit less to put it a little closer to the center, but as you can see when you go over to 5th gear, and that's about where it ends up sitting. And then 1st gear over here, reverse, neutral. But I'll tell you, that shift from 2nd to 3rd, it's really amazing. It's really fast and crisp. I mean, it's definitely, you can definitely tell there's some performance, something going on in there versus the T5. Well, I'm gonna get it buttoned up the rest of the way here and drive it around a little while, and I'll get this video out for you guys. Let me know what you think. All right, guys, thanks for watching.